Good evening, mentorship team. Coach Cliff, we are live here this evening to answer your questions, go over your training, and excited to talk with you guys tonight about a lot of different things, most specifically about running and how we can get you faster. So this is the mentorship team where we are able to go over your entire training plans, your workouts, your sessions, everything that you guys are doing in your training to help you peak for your events. So this is kind of like the midway season check. And at this point of the season, a lot of you guys have already done a heck of a lot of racing. It's hot across the entire United States for that matter. East Coast and West Coast have been heating up good, and everybody is testing out their fitness. So pretty excited next week to also be heading up to Lake Placid to watch our athletes there. We have a pretty good contingency of athletes who will be racing and putting it out there on that long distance course. So this is the mentorship team where you can give me a thumbs up, give me a like when I'm doing something right. You can also give me a thumbs down, though I prefer you don't. Interact. So this is your chance to ask questions and get your questions answered in real time. As part of the mentorship team, we will be able to cover lots of different topics here. So in the future, I want you to make sure you do interact on Facebook. Leave me a message or two about things that are coming up that you are having questions about. So I'm going to start off with tonight's run topic, which is FTP and 5Ks, 10Ks, and up to half marathons, and how we're able to sprinkle this into the program, get you guys faster. So I want to make sure that I'm coming through okay, and I want somebody to go ahead and just give me a question. I'm texting it into you guys so we make sure we're all live and everybody can hear everything that's going on. I'll say hi there. So just go ahead and give me a comment back so I know that everything is cool. And let's see here. Okay, we've got 3 folks on here. We got Durst gave me an angry face. Uh-oh, Durst, what's happening? How are you? All right. This is good. All right, so I'm going to jump right into the topic of running faster and how we do it. Okay, so functional threshold pace by definition, guys, is the basically the speed that you can maintain and hold for either a 30 or a 45-minute runtime trial. Most of you folks are going to be 45 minutes, and the way we do that is we give you an all-out, evenly split runtime trial where you start and finish. You know, you gave it everything you had, so pretty tough effort, and that formulates all the training zones that we use in Training Peaks itself. So I've given you guys a nice little backdrop here tonight. This is actually the Copenhagen half marathon, where the world record was set for a half marathon, pretty outstanding at 58 minutes. So this is the replay of that, which is just an incredible, blistering run. So I'm going to just take 1 second to say hi to Yasi, hi Saxton, welcome to the call, guys. Glad you're here. Hope the training is going well for you guys. Go ahead and feel free to just pop in the questions and we'll jump over to them as they come up. Okay, so we covered the definition. It is a very hard runtime trial where you start and you finish. You know, you get everything you had. It's something that you typically want to do when you're pretty darn rested and fresh for interpretation of the results. So 5Ks, why so short? They are just that, short, but they're hard and they're good, and you can do them often because you can recover fairly well from them. So they can be timed just about any time for the most part. I usually like people to do them all throughout the season. It's very rare that I'll say, hey, don't do one, because you know, you really are getting the benefit of speed there all around, and the recovery time, as I said, is fairly minimal. So the benefits of 10Ks, right, obviously a little bit longer. They complement Olympic distance and up to a 70.3 type of schedule. And the 5K, 10K distance is very specific to functional threshold pace. So that's why we do those types of sessions. They're very hard. And those runs, when you compete against other people, gives you that 5% boost that you just can't get, you know, as a standalone training effort. So it's very hard for me as the coach to give you something like I say, hey, go run as hard as you can for 45 minutes or 30 minutes. A lot of you guys would get pretty bent if that's the type of training I was giving you all the time. So we use the races to get us a better output than we could do on our own with training. So half marathons, they're typically more suitable for an Ironman and up to an Ironman in terms of increasing your functional threshold pace. If you're a B or a C level athlete, I have to move my head so you can see that. So B's and C's are kind of like the more advanced folks typically, and that does help to raise functional threshold pace. You don't actually have to do threshold work to raise your functional threshold pace. So important to know that all training is to the greater good. The more specific we want to get to raising the functional threshold pace, we have to make it much closer to that 30-minute barrier, maybe a 15-minute time trial, run time trial, even 10-minute or 1-mile time trial types of efforts are also very good. And then the even up to 45 minutes in an hour is also very helpful. So triathletes versus runners, triathletes, triathletes should really think about doing these types of events mid-season often, which means sometimes on a weekend, for instance, riding your bike to the event, or doing a long extended warm-up before the event, and doing the race, frankly, on tired legs, because we can't taper all that much for these types of events, but they're still very good to do in that way. It also can be done as part of a long run. So, if it's a Sunday long run or Saturday long run, you do an extended warm up and then hit the main set, which would be the 10K or the 5K, and then finish it off with, a bunch more miles to complement that type of a run. So how often do you do these types of things? The 5Ks you can do very regularly, every 3 to 5 weeks. A 10K maybe every 3 to 6 weeks, 3 to 8 weeks. And, if you're trying to time a half marathon, that's a little bit more tricky. We want to do that about 3 weeks out from a 70.3, 3 to 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks out from an Ironman type of a thing. Or all these things happen to be done racing in the off season when you're trying to increase your functional threshold pace standalone. So you can take a foray into, just running over the winter, which is also very helpful in developing speed work. Okay, so I'm going to take a pause there and jump over and take a look. Durst has got a question for me this evening. He says, is there a certain pace reduction or heart rate reduction we should use for, say, every 10 degrees of heat? Also, do I have to use FTP for my 5K race? If so, I set a new one on the 4th. Okay, Durst, so let's tackle the first question. Is there a pace reduction or heart rate reduction you should use for every 10 degrees of heat? It's not quite linear that way, right? So if you're a larger athlete that has a larger body that has to keep cool, it could go exponentially higher in terms of the beats per minute. But the range is typically 5 to 8 beats per minute for, every, I'd say, 10 degrees that you go up. So it can be pretty hot after 80 degrees, and that holds true after about 80 degrees. So once you start to get up to 90 and even 100, all bets are off on where the heart rate's going to be. You're going to be at threshold and then some. So pretty challenging stuff. Durst, you also say, can I use my FTP from the last 5K race? If so, you set a new one on the 4th. I would look into that data, okay, and depends on when and how long that run effort was, right? So if you, let's say, took 24 minutes to do the test and you ran it at 102% of FTP, would we say you set a new FTP best? Not likely, because, right, the definition is we need a 30-minute test to really go off of. And really for advanced athletes, a 30-minute test is better, and because we find that the decoupling rate that you would degrade for testing is less. And for more beginner athletes where stamina is more of an issue, we sometimes use a 45-minute test, which is better. So you did 23 minutes for the 5K, right? So that should be, if you were trying to benchmark, that should have been 23 minutes should be about 102% of FTP that you should be able to hold. So if you were less than 100%, right, you wouldn't want to adjust your FTP. What's happening, Alana? How are you? Good evening. Any questions? Thanks for the hand wave. Give you 2 thumbs up. How's your training going? All right. Denise, good evening to you as well. Denise says, can we just add a 5K to our weekend without much warning, or do you want us to plan for it? So you can add a 5K pretty much regularly. The only caveat I would say is If you've had some higher heart rate work the day before, that could be a little bit challenging, and especially if you do hard runs back to back, I wouldn't want that. So back-to-back heart rate sessions, back-to-back hard run sessions, no bueno. And otherwise, you can pretty much drop into 5Ks fairly regularly and on tired legs. I only ask that, if the day after the race, you really the next 48 hours, you need to just watch any harder efforts, especially on the running front. 10Ks is not as easy to just drop into. You want to have those be premeditated. And if your long runs are typically easy, right, very easy, then this would just be a sharpening type of session that you would have in the middle of a training block and in the middle of a long run. If you have really hard interval work or you're doing a longer run that has some challenging aspects to it, then you cut out the main set and just stick with the 5K or the 10K for that matter, and not try and duplicate energy systems by doing the 5K and as well as doing the intervals that I'm asking. Okay? So Denise says, my legs are tired most of the time, so no problem there. Yeah, said no triathlete ever. My legs are fresh as a daisy. Not so much. Yeah. I always love the 3 weeks after Ironman where you walk up and down stairs, or even after a marathon, and it's amazing how those legs feel like fresh, like you're flying up and down stairs. So yeah, nowadays I don't have quite as tired legs regularly. So, but I do know what that's like, very much so. What's happening, Shannon? Shannon, good evening. Glad to see you're on the call, asking some questions. So Shannon says, so to add on a 5K over and training session. I'm not sure if I quite get the text there. Maybe it just got cut off there. But if you are going to do a 5K, a hard 5K, okay, you would take the total training time. Let's just say it's an hour, and just cut out the intervals and leave them out of that session and just do the 5K alone, easy, okay? So Shannon says, in addition to what is planned for the training week, no, you would want to incorporate it with something, some type of a run that you have scheduled on the weekend, not double it up. That wouldn't be ideal. Okay, Durst says, I've got an Olympic try and have a half distance try back-to-back weekends coming up. Any workouts to avoid in the week between? No, just stick to the script, and if you're going to taper down a little harder, give yourself 2 to 3 days of grace. I've given you the notes on how to self-taper, but yeah, watch any high sustained higher heart rate work, Durst, if you want to find an ability to stay a little more fresh. Okay, so give yourself more extended recovery. Yuki, good evening. Welcome to the call. Yuki says, it's a double bike day in the morning and the evening for today in Training Peaks, but I don't see a session. Did I get lucky? You did not get lucky, my friend. You got very lucky. You only have one session planned for today. That was a placeholder. I believe that when I was moving your schedule around, just the placeholder, the text says double bike workout. So just one session for today, okay? So you get a hall pass for today, not to worry. Good questions this evening, guys. Keeping it rolling here. Alana says, going to be an extreme Sherpa duty next weekend, so we'll miss the long bike. We'll try my best to get in the run, swim, and strength. Anything to adjust the week before or after? Yes, you could make your longer ride the weekend before you leave, so this weekend and next weekend, the weekend after you come back could be an hour longer than what you're doing right now. That's one way to do it. The other way to do it is to ride on Saturday before the race and hopefully, get a long ride in at some point. Maybe your Sherpa duties will maybe not be quite as heavy as you're thinking, hopefully, on Saturday, which is mostly the time when up there everybody's at Lake Placid. Alana's heading up to Lake Placid with Mike, and that Saturday is typically, in bed early, chilling out, just sitting there twiddling your thumbs, stressing out before the race. All right, so Shannon says, is it okay to do a half marathon race 2 weeks before my 70.3? Yes, 2 weeks is okay. That's fine. And I would say no closer than that. 1 week out is going to be too tight. 3 weeks is where I normally shoot for. Thank you for the thumbs up, guys. Thank you. But three to four is fine. And 2 weeks, while it's close, it's, as long as you have good run training leading in, is not going to be terribly bad. But 3 to 4 weeks is my ideal before 70.3. So Durst says, for run workouts, I've got an out and back loop that can be uphill first or vice versa. Should I do it uphill in the first half of the workout or the second half? I think you should finish uphill last if you can do it for your run workouts, okay? Better to finish strong than to try and run downhill. That's going to be harder on the way back because you're not going to get the same output and effort on the way back. So Alana says she won't have her bike in New York. Well, maybe rent one? Maybe borrow one. I don't know. I'm going to borrow one when I'm up there as well. But we'll have a good group of folks running for sure on the race on Sunday, Alana. So up in Lake Placid, you can expect to see some good training. It's such an awesome place to train, as you know, and to do a race. So that also reminds me to remind you guys for next year, Ironman Lake Placid is one of our key races, as is our camp will be held on that very same weekend. I'm in the process of organizing a house for you guys. We'll have a team house for those who will be racing and for those who will be also at the camp. So more details to come on that. If you want to get in on it, let me know as soon as possible. Alana says, have been liking the swim drills. Feel like my swim has really improved. All right. For me, any suggestions to help sinking legs? Yes, definitely. So make sure that you're keeping your head down, head down, tucked in, as if you're trying to hold the tennis ball with your chin. And I also want you to think about pressing your chest down into the water and sinking the front of your chest down so that your feet pop up in the back. Your chest has all this air in it, so it's kind of like a ballast. And when you have all that air, it lifts the chest up and pushes the feet down. So if you don't keep the head down when you're taking a stroke, you can find that the feet tend to sink. Also, weight on your roll and bring your head around lastly. So your feet should roll first, your hips stack, and then your shoulders stack, and your head is the last thing to come around. If you pick up your head too soon to breathe, typically the feet also tend to sink. So, all right. Good questions. Good stuff. You guys are keeping me on my toes tonight. Durst says, goal-wise, what kind of goals should we set? Like, I'd love to go sub 6.5 or sub 12 in a full, be an AWA, or what goals are realistic in your view? Okay, so Durst, do me a favor in the comments section, all right, of the Monday after the plan has timed out. So, you know, and I haven't written the block for that yet. Put those goals in there and those types of things. As part of the mentorship program, right, I review results, and I'm going to be looking at that information that you put in there, and also any races that you put on the calendar as I start to build things out. As far as goals go, it's hard for me to kind of speak to that exactly right now. Some of that depends upon what your thresholds exactly are and what you'd be able to support. And I have a couple different links I will post for you, Durst, on what a 70.3 split would look like in terms of the IF and the threshold that you'd have to have. So to go sub 6, okay, you already have to have a threshold that's at a certain level to support that. And it depends on what course you're also selecting. So it's a little bit complicated in terms of what you're asking. As far as achieving AWA, you know, that there's lots of different ways to also get into that. So besides just the placement aspect, right, certain numbers of races also give you points. So it just depends, you know, are we talking bronze level? Are we talking silver? Are we talking, you know, gold? So great things to have. You always have to have goals. In my opinion, as a coach, the more you anchor what it is you want to do now and in the future, the better you're going to perform. Always, 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 guys. So write those goals down, put them on the Monday for me to take a look at, and I'll be building the plan out with all of that in mind. Mike, welcome to Taperville. Mike is starting to taper, which if you've ever followed some of my tapering strategies, you guys all know that I have you training pretty darn hard right up to the start of that race. So we're looking forward to seeing you do well, Mike, in Lake Placid. You're looking fit and strong. So Mike says he's doing a training try Saturday, then have another swim on Sunday. Should he do the swim, the Avenues event to practice swimming in large groups? Either way, he's going to do an open swim that day, open water swim. I definitely think you should do it, my friend. Yep, I say go for it. That's a good one. Yuki says he's registered for Oceanside. Awesome. We've got a great group of athletes already headed there. I think you're the 6th already to sign up. And I think I've got a couple more who are pending. I know it's sold out, which is incredible. So that's really cool. And you asked me, how many training peaks should I plan next season? I would try to, if you're trying to work within the 70.3 time frame, Yuki, I think that you can peak for 70.3s fairly easily. 3 would be tricky, 2 would be ideal, but I think you shouldn't turn down racing, 4 even 70.3s, provided that they're closer together when you're very fit with enough break in between to recover from them. So, for instance, you could do Oceanside and maybe St. George like you did. You could find other races too, but then stagger it a bit and then race more. There's nothing wrong with racing just so long as you recognize that, you can't be in that A priority shape at all times. I think you could also, benefit from a few more Olympic distances and sprints to raise your threshold and your race potential because that really helps us a lot. So Dersh says, bronze is all good for AWA. Any drills for increasing stroke strength besides paddles? Yes, that's a stretch cords, right? That's another way to develop arm strength. That's some of the gym work that I give you guys. But I think that besides paddles, probably stretch bands are the next best thing. And yeah, Durst, we'll get you bronze, man. Let's do it. I like it. Clear cut. The goal is there. There's definitely a path for that. Denise has a question. She says, swim question. My kick is not producing much. Any suggestions how to fix it? Yeah, so one sequence I like a lot is to use the red zoomer fins in the water and use those so you overload it by starting off kicking with the fins alone, right? So you can just kick down the pool with the kickboard and then pop those off and then swim just normally without the fins and alternate that every 50 yards. And what that does is it really overloads the feet, but it keeps the kicking in a very concentrated small spot, and it teaches you those red fins, the zoomer fins, to use the surface area of the top of the foot and the bottom of the foot to massage the water. So that would be a really good thing for you to be practicing there, Denise. Next question on the docket here. Mike says, Mike, haven't had coffee in about a week. Stick with this till race day? Ooh, I think you're going to have to ask a lot of that one because if I didn't get coffee for a week, I would be pretty edgy, just saying. But if you've gone without coffee for a week on race day, you may find that you explode with energy in a good and not so good way, right? Because before an Ironman, it's not like a sprint. You really want to keep yourself bottled up. And you do read about people doing this from time to time, and it's to help you sleep better. It's not really you don't want to have it be so different, Mike, that on race morning, right, suddenly you're just so amped you can't control your energy. So maybe you want to introduce a little more coffee or have just like a modest amount of coffee every day leading up to the race, and then on race morning have a little bit more. So coffee is a performance enhancer. It is illegal. So, it's something that we want you to have if that's what you use in your routine, okay? So, good question. Actually, great question. Alana, I'll let you field that one. Great questions tonight, guys. Really, really psyched about this. So, Shannon says, how much should we kick during the swim in a race? I don't use them much except for balance in the water. Is that a mistake? No, you definitely want to kick. It should be a short, snappy kick that really doesn't, activate the muscles very much. It's only to propel the body up in the water. Most people have a negative kick, meaning when they kick, it actually slows them down. So we want to get you higher up in the water. Use a very small kick within a 6-inch box to make sure that you're not introducing that foot way outside of the body line so that that's slowing you down, because it's the equivalent of like driving down the highway and sticking your arm out the window. I mean, the kick is really challenging like that. So we also don't want to activate all those muscles and get your breathing very heavy. So it should be a short, snappy kick within a 6-inch box. How's that? Okay. Mike, let's go, right? Yeah, it's funny. When the race gets this close, you just want it to just happen, right? It's like, let's get it going, let's go. All right. Yeah, Dunkin' Donuts in New York, nothing like it. Oh, man. Good stuff, good stuff. All right, so I'm going to switch gears and head you guys back over to the topic of the evening, which I had you guys chatting about a little bit. And hopefully you can get this glare off my screen for you guys. We got a little bit of a glare. Let me just flip back over here. So FTP and running in the off season, right? This is the ultimate time to do that, is having you guys try to raise your run in the off season. It's not very easy to do it when you're during the season because you have to bike quite a bit. If you're stand-up runner, right, we're talking, hey, I'm just a marathoner, half marathoner type thing, then that's perfectly fine to, be working on speed almost all the season, or at least a good chunk of it. But for you triathletes out there, it's more important to take a three-month kind of window, let's call it January, February, March, or maybe it's December, January, February, to increase your run mileage and your speed there. And that's also a good time to introduce some 5Ks and 10Ks for you guys too. One of my favorite all-time races to do was the Fred Labow Classic in New York City, which was an odd distance. It was a 5-miler in Central Park, and it was freezing cold, and I was always coming off of some amount of base fitness, but there was no triathlon in sight, so you could just kind of unwind it. And it was always fun to see what I could do in the off season. And those runs really did help, looking back on it each year, to get faster and faster. It's hard to race, swim, bike, run equally, especially when you get into the 70.3 distance and Ironman racing type of training. So an early season half marathon, also not a bad idea. Again, it leads well to some base work that can be done, and getting that speed and strength up. And if you're newer to longer distance running, half marathons are a great place to prove out your stamina and strength. Marathons are not great practice for Ironmans. They're not great practice for triathlon in general. They're definitely fun and they're challenging in their own right, but they are a beast unto themselves. So the recovery time is very long from a lot of marathons. And if we really are talking about getting faster, we're talking about that 30-minute run best or 45-minute run best. And the way that we introduce and increase that speed is by 5K, 10Ks, track workouts, fartleks, short efforts that typically it's 17 to about 30 minutes worth of on interval work, and that's all you need to raise it up and each week, and then doing these races, obviously. And so lastly, the run is how to adjust your zone. So when you're going through and doing these races, right, and we just talked about this is a great example working with Durst here, is when you do a test and you see that your IF, your intensity factor in training peaks, has suddenly raised up, that's your key to raise your FTP. So let's say that you do the run and the IF comes out to 105 or it's 108, right? And if you did that for a 30-minute runtime trial, right, that the definition is 1.0. So you went 8% above what you would expect. And so in that case, right, you would literally raise it up to that value of 108%. So Denise says, do you have any other athletes doing Atlantic City? Yes, we definitely do. It's one that I didn't get out to last year with you guys. In 2019, I will be headed out there, at least fingers crossed, because that is a race that we should have a good group out there. I'm not sure on the final head count of how many folks we'll have, but I believe it's at least 4, if not 5 there at that race. So, yep, looking forward to having a good throwdown there with a lot of folks at that race. So it's grown. The last few years, it's really grown. From when I did it, it was, I always forget the name of the company that put it on the first year, but it was not an Ironman branded event. And it was a challenge race, and they had a 70.3 and a full. And then Ironman came in, and with Delmo Sports, all of a sudden now it's a huge race, massive race that's practically, if not already, sold out. So good stuff. All right, guys. So wonderful questions this evening. Any other questions that you guys have for me at this point? I'm gonna leave it at this juncture for us to kind of take a break and see you guys next week. Thanks for coming. Thanks for all the great questions. Thanks for all the great training. It's really exciting this time of year, seeing you guys just absolutely killing it out there. My parting shot for you to think about for this week is to be really, really conscious of when you're riding outside. Watch the traffic, watch people. I want you to anticipate cars that they're going to be coming at you. It's challenging, but you know, I hear these stories about people and getting hit by cars. I don't want you to be one of those guys or girls statistically that can't finish the season because they have that. So be smart, stay alert, ride the trainer often and hard, and just be smart and be safe out there. So mentorship team, thanks for joining. Thanks for the likes. Have a great night, and I will see you guys next week. Don't forget to post what questions you'd like and topics you'd like answered for next week. So I will see you guys soon. Have a great evening.